Welcome to Espiritu Coffee Chats. I'm Valerie, co-founder of Surje Coffee Co, a specialty coffee business rooted in culture, community, and connection.
And I'm Arlene, founder of Lunasol Wellness, where I guide people through holistic interior design, astrology, human design, and spiritual alignment.
Before every episode, we start with a cacao ritual, a moment to slow down, connect, and pour into ourselves before diving into deep conversations.
This podcast is our space to explore herbalism, spirituality, entrepreneurship, and the everyday magic of being Latinas navigating life on our own terms.
So grab your cafecito or your cacao and join us for real talk, soul connections, and a little bit of magic along the way.
Enjoy.
Welcome back.
Welcome.
So today we're doing another episode on life as an entrepreneur and code switching.
Ooh, hot topic.
Yes, I feel like this runs every day in our lives.
Right. I think I did it a week ago.
Oh my gosh. I honestly, sometimes I forget and I then catch myself code switching. I'm like, wait, I didn't actually want to do that. I'm just so used to doing it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I definitely consider myself a Latina entrepreneur. I think when people look at me, I'm pretty sure I present as, sometimes people think I'm like Middle Eastern, but for the most part, Latina.
Yeah, same. I always get Egyptian.
I think we're Egyptian sisters in the past.
Yeah, I haven't traveled to that life yet, but I'm excited to do it.
We will. We don't have to code switch either.
I love it. Okay, so let's dive in and I guess let's give a brief background because I know we've done it on other episodes in the past, but on how you became an entrepreneur and why you decided this path.
Yeah, well, I became an entrepreneur because I wanted to find a way where I can still be at home and have a schedule that had some flexibility so that I can still be a mother to my children. And I didn't know at the time, but entrepreneurship is really hard.
Yeah.
I think I started out dibble-dabbling with the MLMs. And then I was like, I kind of like this. Clearly, I'm not part of any MLM anymore. But I think that for me, it was like also allowing that freedom for myself and also being able to play in the things that I really enjoy. And yeah, I wanted to be powerful. And I felt like being an entrepreneur allows me to step up for myself, for my family, and have a business with purpose that creates change. That is like really one of the biggest things. I would say the biggest is probably the freedom that I really wanted to find within my schedule. So I can be a mother to my children.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. For the longest, I had the bug of entrepreneurship, but I never really did anything with it until late in my life. Well, no, I'm not that old.
Girl, stop. Late.
Right before I turned 30 was when I was like, okay, I kind of am digging. I'm like, I had been in corporate. I'm kind of over this. Like, it's great. I saw myself. I really wanted to be like COO or in the C-suite or something. And I think afterwards, just the environment just became so toxic and they literally ruled my entire life. Like I was always working and that was my priority, which probably shouldn't have been, but that's fine. It got me to where I am today. So when I finally left just a few years ago, I finally left corporate a year and a half ago, I think. And yeah, for running our own business. And now having been an entrepreneur for a year and a half and doing my own schedule, I'm like, man, I don't think I can go back because the freedom alone. And we have 2 dogs. So I get to I wake up, I'll do my morning things, walk them, and then go do my work stuff. And then I come back because they're just so needy and I have to take care of them. And in a corporate career, I don't think I'd be able to do that and be home and cook for when Chris gets home. So yeah, I think the freedom of choice and my own schedule was definitely now something that I'm like, oh, I don't think I can give that up anymore.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the things that I've realized is even though it sounds like, ooh, that sounds glamorous, your own schedule, you can make it. But no, you got to be really good at multitasking.
Yes.
And also disciplined because as much as you can have a free schedule, there's still like a discipline that goes in it. So I just want to give that disclaimer out there.
Yeah, we're not like lollygagging just at the beach chilling all day.
Right. Yeah.
Although there are days that I would love to do that.
Yeah, I feel that. When did you first realize or in your introduction to code switching? Like, I know a lot of people don't know that term.
Yeah.
So do you want to explain that really quick?
Yes. So I don't know the dictionary definition of it, but essentially code switching is when you change how you speak from like your normal, like this podcast is definitely more us being informal and kind of our everyday speak. But if I'm in like a corporate setting or in a setting with a bunch of men, then I'm going to change how I talk, and it'll be, I change the words that I use. I definitely change my tone of voice for sure. The pace at which I'm speaking at, whether it's slow or fast. Yeah. And I think also a little bit going, I wouldn't say it's necessarily code switching per se, but even like how I hold myself, like how I carry myself, my shoulders are up broader. I'm like taking up bigger space usually, because I feel the need to overcompensate, I guess, a little.
Yeah.
But I would tie that in with the code switching because I normally don't do that. So.
Right. It's also, the more that I think about it, I feel like you will naturally do code switching, right? I mean, as you know, you are in one setting versus another, but it almost is tied to fawning because you're changing kind of your personality in a sense. And there's a difference of being who you are and just adapting, right? But the code switching is where you are uncomfortable. So then that can cause you to go into that fawning mode. And fawning can look like being overly friendly or, you know, overly complimenting or just trying to wiggle your way into somebody and, you know, trying to like really get them to recognize you. And now you're changing the way you talk and the way you speak and, you know, your personality in a sense. So I feel like code switching was something that I definitely learned probably when I was going to college, for sure.
Yeah. I kind of feel that I learned it early on simply because I was exposed to my parents' business so young that like when you're, and obviously they're Latino and they were working in aerospace. So predominantly white, predominantly male space. And so having to learn how to navigate that arena at a young age, I think, and then also like me carrying it onto like my adulthood, working in corporate, which is a lot of the same. Yeah, I feel like I learned it really early on.
Right. Yeah, I guess I have two, but I think where I felt like I was really feeling it was when I went to college and I went to FITM, which is it's a private school for design. And a lot of it was all mostly women, but they were mostly like white women and they came from, you know, all parts of the United States. They were also younger than me because I started there, you know, I mean, I started college when I was like 21. I was starting to go to community college. When I went to FITM, I think I was maybe 25 or 26. So I was older than everybody.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't like it at the time. And then I also had my son, single mom, you know, brown, and then also paying for my own way to go there.
Yeah.
And also coming in from the Inland Empire into LA, you know, there was a little bit more grit behind me in a sense. But I remember just being like, whoa, ooh, who are these? They talk different.
Yeah.
They were like, they look at you like, what are you doing here? And, you know, there was just a level of, I was just uncomfortable. Even with the teachers, I felt like I had to work harder. So then I would try to be friendlier to the teachers and, you know, just really try to be recognized. And so I felt like that was one of the spaces where, you know, I was feeling very uncomfortable with allowing me just to be me. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should change my clothes. Like maybe I should do my hair differently just so I can adapt and fit in. And then I think that's where I started to feel like really uncomfortable. But then I'd go right back to, you know, the Inland Empire and be like, put on my regular clothes back on and be like, what's up? Put on my hip hop music. And, you know, so there was just like, I feel like that was where I was like, whoa, this isn't fun. I feel uncomfortable every time I'm in this space.
Yeah. It's almost like this, not an alter ego, but it's like this persona that we put on, this face, so that when we entered these other spaces that we don't feel comfortable in, or that are not necessarily built for us either, then will be accepted a little bit more. Or in our minds, we're thinking this is what they want to see. And so this will help me be accepted and kind of make it easier for me to go through this experiment. And yeah, I think I experienced it the most. College wasn't too much for me because I was in a sorority, a Latina sorority. So I kind of had that group where I could be myself. And our classes were so large that it really didn't matter. The teachers didn't know all 400 of us. So when I got to corporate, I think that's probably where I had the most code switching, because I was not only trying to fit into the world that I had been employed, but I was also helping clients, and I was working with like Fortune 500 companies like Amazon, NFL, Yahoo, those people. And obviously they're very professional, corporate, large businesses. So you want to present a certain way. So I think that was my experience, was like, okay, I need to fit in, and like people need to take me seriously because I'm presenting research and data, and they need to believe into the story. And so that's kind of where I think I really fine-tuned my code switching. But I think even now, like being in as a business owner, I'm like, oh, I go in and out of it all the time now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I 100% feel that, especially when I was in the real estate realm. You know, you have to code switch all the time with your client, and then with, depending on, you know, whatever the client that you're attracting and whatever even city that you live in. And then also, you know, it's a male dominant, what is that called? Industry. There you go. You know, you're dealing with loan officers on one call. You're dealing with the client, you know, the decision maker, which usually is a male. And then you're dealing with your broker, and then also your colleagues, and most of them are all male.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was where I was like, oh God, now I have to put on this like masculine Arlene, especially when I'm dealing with other agents, and I have to like really come forward with this masculine negotiating energy.
Yeah.
And it was where I was like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
You know? Like, this is not fun. Or even when I walk into these super professional spaces, like now, you know, real estate agents love our networking. But, you know, again, I'd be like, you know, the only woman sometimes, or a few women would be in there, but then they wouldn't even be women of color. So then I try to find like, where are my women of color people? And then try to get in and talk with, you know, and then even then you're still trying, you know, so you're just like constantly like booming in that professional, you know, as far as for me in that real estate aspect. And then, and even now when just with me just doing my own personal spiritual business, I remember when I was living in Temecula and I would network out there was a different version of Arlene versus the Arlene that's going to go out network in LA versus the person who's going to go network in Orange County versus the one who's going to come to San Diego. And at some point I was like, I am just so tired of this.
Yes.
Like, I got to put on this hat, take off that hat. I'll put on this hat, but on like almost personalities, you know? And that's where I just got really, this is exhausting. I don't need to be doing this anymore. Like, I am who I am, and you can get over it. You don't have to do business with me if you don't want to.
Yes. I think it's hard also as a business owner to be like, I'm just not going to care, and I'm just going to be me in all variations, because like at the end of the day, it does kind of affect our wallet. If the client, if somebody comes in and they don't happen, and this happens at the coffee shop, y'all, like people will come in, I'll tell them a story about us and why we started in coffee, what we like to do that's different. And we're a dairy-free business. And the moment that I say that we're a dairy-free business, I've had a handful of people be like, okay, I'm leaving. And I'm like, oh, it hurts so much. But I'm like, well, this is what it is. This is how we stay true to our authentic selves, because we're dairy-free because most of the people we serve are people of color who are naturally lactose intolerant. So I'm like, that's just how it is. And I don't want to take that back. So yeah, I think it's not necessarily code switching, but I'm like, man, if I had just sold it a different way, maybe I would have kept that client. But at the end of the day, it's then is it really me? Is it really my business if I'm out here trying to fit into what they want?
Right.
Yeah. I think also code switching, I think it's like kind of for us probably twofold, because we're Latina and because we're women. Like it just takes a different toll. This guy walked in one time and he was like marketing his services, something. And I'm working at the coffee shop. I'm the barista. And he walks in I'm making a drink for someone, and he's, hey, does the owner ever stop by this place? And I was like,
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And I looked at him and I was like, yes, she does. It happens to be me.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. And I had another customer there who happened to be the neighbor, the business next door. And it just made me laugh. And he was like, oh, and he literally just handed me his flyers and walked out. I'm like, what do you do at this point? Excuse me, sir. I know that you probably have no intention of thinking that I couldn't be a business owner, but I just happen to be. Like,
right.
Come on, make some space for women to be in business. And it was just really funny. I was like, bro, come in with your preconceived notions. You didn't do any kind of market research back on who my business is. But anyways.
Get your unconscious biases out of here. I had a similar story maybe 2 weeks ago. I was in an event in La Jolla, and there was me and another person talking. She had her own booth. You know, she appeared to be Caucasian, I'm assuming. She seemed like a white lady. And I was next to her. We're having a really great conversation about our business. And then a person comes up, because we're at like this event where you can have your own little booth and stuff set up. You know, we're both by our booths and we're like booth neighbors. So we're chit-chatting. And then the event starts. And so we start to have the people come in who are attending the event. And this person walks over to where both her and I are at. And she sees my booth and she's, she's like reading it. She's, oh, astrology, human design, how exciting. And she literally looks at me and the white woman, and she looks back and forth, and she's like, oh, so you're the astrologer? This is your booth? It's so amazing. And the other ladies, no, this is her booth. And then she looks at me like, and I didn't think she even knew, but she looked at me like, and then she looked at her like, oh, so is that what like a spiritual person's supposed to look like? Like a white Caucasian older woman? And I was like, Lord. So that's where I also too, I was like, because sometimes in some spaces here in San Diego, depending on the demographic, I do get uncomfortable still. Yeah. So I knew already that I was going to be faced with that sort of situation, but I was like, you know what? Normally old Arlene would have been like, oh, she needs to recognize me. And, oh, I need to prove to her that this is what, an astrologer could also look like and all this stuff. And I was like, girl, bye. Yeah. Go ask her if she could read your chart. And then, and then maybe later on you can figure out that it's me. And hopefully that'll help you look at how, what spiritual women could actually look like in this community that we are in, because San Diego is a melting pot. That was like one thing that I was like, wow, that was interesting. One of the things that I was going to bring up with code switching was when I was doing, when I moved to San Diego and decided to, start doing real estate out here, I was like, let me join a team. So when you're an agent, you can go and interview other different, with other different teams. So it's really like you have control over what team you want to be a part of. And so most teams want to interview you because they're like, sure, I'd love to take part of your commission. Yeah. Let's talk. So I interviewed between 3 different teams. And then, at that point I was like, kind of deciding which one I wanted to be a part of. And there was 2 of them where I walked into the room and I was like, oh, I feel it. I feel like the lights were just going to come on. Code switch. I was like, I could feel it. And as much as everybody, and I'm not saying this to like, I'm saying it in a reality where I don't know if, how can I explain it? I don't feel like, oh, it's their fault,
right?
It's just, this isn't the space for me, and I don't want to feel like I have to like, put my horn in and kind of try to get in where I fit in. And I'm just looking around, having different conversations with the different team members, with the actual team lead. And as we're talking and I'm just, feeling, I feel like I'm going to eventually feel like that those are the things that I'm going to have to do in order to feel comfortable in this team. And so when I spoke with the actual team that I ended up joining, they're predominantly a Latina team. And I talked to the person, because this person was like, you've actually interviewed with all the other really good, high performing teams here in San Diego. Like, why us? And I was like, because I don't want to code switch. And he was like, what does that mean? And I was like, you don't know what that means? Okay, come here. Let me sit down and tell you. So it was just that. I just want to feel like I can come in and I can, have these conversations of cultural conversations, or having the same background, or just having, things where I'm like, hey, this is like what I'm dealing with and working with. These are my challenges. And it's also because I'm a Latina woman, and it's also because I'm a woman. And so I felt like I can have those conversations here and feel safe and feel comfortable versus having them in those other 2 team scenarios that I could have been a part of. Not to say like I wouldn't have been successful,
Right.
right?
For sure.
But it was just like at this point in age, in my lifetime at this point, I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to feel comfortable and in alignment, and I want to have these conversations where I don't feel like I have to censor myself.
Yes.
Because that's also what code switching is. You're censoring part of your identity, part of your beliefs, part of your morals and all that stuff to try to fit in. I mean, that literally is what code switching is. It's, you know, I'm going to act like I don't care about that stuff, but really I do. But because I want to get into this sector, maybe work with this client, I'm going to put that self and that part of me aside and then act like it doesn't exist. But then at that point, then you start to lose your authenticity.
Yeah. Yeah. You lose your pizzazz in a way. Yeah. I think now being in business and now creating the culture of our business, I don't want people to feel like they have to code switch. And some of the feedback that we've gotten from our baristas is like, this is the first place that they've been working at where they feel welcomed and where they feel understood and seen.
Yeah.
And they don't have to change that. And girl, I mean, sometimes they show up rough and I'm like, can you tell things nicer to me? Come on.
Yeah.
But also if they're direct and they just shoot the shit like that, I'm like, all right, thank you. I appreciate you giving it to me like that, but please be nice next time.
Right.
So I think like creating that space where people can show up as themselves authentically. And yeah, and because I want that for me, like it's so exhausting to have to code switch. And yeah, sometimes I'll have to change up my tone and the words that I use, even as a Latina business owner, depending on what circles I enter, but it's far less as it was like everyday code switching in corporate America.
Right. Yeah, that is one of the things about owning your own business is you can go to these various networking events and feel like, you know, you can have these networks and these communities that you're a part of and you feel like you can be authentically who you are without having to put the switch on. So I feel like that's something important. And also diversity and inclusion. I feel like, you know, the more we have that in our realms, in work life, in networking life, in different business professionals, then the less likely the code switching is going to happen because it's going to be a melting pot.
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to feel like, oh, you know, I can connect with this person on A, B, C, and D, and I don't have to switch certain aspects that are really my core identity or values or whatever. And I feel like in some spaces that I've gone to where I feel uncomfortable, it's because I'm looking around the room and I'm like, I don't see any diversity. You know, it's the same personality, same look, same everything, right? And that could happen in any, you know, spaces that you go to. I mean, I'm not only saying, oh, the white people provide that. Like I've also gotten to Latina networking events and, you know, everybody's like super like speaking Spanish. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm that girl that don't know how to speak Spanish. So now how do I, you know, but it's like, you know, it exists and it's out there in all these different types of spaces. And so I think our point is to, you know, go to spaces where you feel like you could be authentically you and you don't have to code switch. Or if you're working in a corporate, what would your be advice for somebody who's working in corporate or in a job where they feel like, oh, I can't just leave. Like, I got to figure this out.
Yeah, I think it becomes a balance of showing code switching versus your authenticity of who you are. And I think I was starting to get there towards the end of my corporate career before I left, where obviously I knew I had to be like customer facing, helping people, and had a certain type of presentation about me. But I also managed to kind of show up as myself, maybe a little bit less full of myself, but in some way I was showing up a little bit like me, how I would in everyday life. So I think it's just about finding the balance that works for you. And of course, I think it also goes back to like your careers. If you really don't care you just want to work and you just want to excel in work and you want it separate from your personal life because that's not tied to who your image is, great.
Right.
Like code switch, run up the ladder, do it. But if you want to have that balance where it's like you're spending most of your life working and you want to be accepted as who you are in that area, then, you know, really try to find the balance between like maybe code switching, or maybe you don't code switch. Maybe you just find a form of yourself in your form that fits in this space. I mean, just know there's going to be a little bit of pushback because of how corporate America is, but you can totally do it.
Right. Yeah. I feel the more you can be comfortable just in your own skin and in your own presence, no matter where you're at, no matter what group you're with or you're working, that you can feel like you don't have to be pushed to do that and be a completely different person or change parts of yourself so that people can like you or accept you. Because you are you and you are authentic and you're meant to be a different human being. I mean, if we were all the same, then this would be a boring ass world. So also embracing your authenticity with the things that you bring to the table, your voice, your values, your background. Like sometimes when we code switch, we're not allowing others to get to know different aspects of maybe culture and background, and having those conversations where we're educating each other, right? We're too scared to speak up and say, oh, well, you know, I kind of disagree with that. Or, oh, did you ever think about it in this way? And, you know, and I think that's where hopefully America starts to move into a better, I don't know, a better space for that. We'll see, but it's going to take us, the ones who are not forced to code switch, but feel where you have to in order to feel comfortable and fit in, or to even move up the ladder. Fortunately, it's usually people of color. It's usually women, or it's, you know, the LGBTQ community. You know, it's like all of the marginalized communities are usually the ones who have to code switch. So it's also being aware of when you're doing that, and also being like, but I don't want to do that today. I'm over it. Or I'm going to, like what Valerie said, I'm going to keep code switching up that ladder. And then when I make up that ladder, we're going to change things from the bottom down.
Yeah. So as an entrepreneur, making sure that you provide that culture and that space where people feel safe and welcome to be their authentic selves, within reason, obviously. But yeah, making sure that people don't have to code switch around you if they don't have to.
Right. Yeah. So I hope that this conversation maybe helped you, you know, just kind of understand maybe what code switching is if you've never heard of it. If there's anything that you want to contribute to this conversation, please feel free to, you know, reach out, let us know. And yeah, I think we can dive deeper into some of these harder topics, because these aren't topics that are fun for us to talk about sometimes or easy. We are sharing parts of ourselves, but at the same time, we know like we're not the only ones feeling this.
Yeah. I think quickly, just one thing that I'm thinking about right now is there was this video clip. I can't remember where I saw it. I think it was like a news show, like a Bill Maher type of thing. And one of the guests was saying, if you look for sexism, you will find it. If you look for racism, you will find it. And so similar to this code switching thing, like if you look for spaces and experiences where you need to do this, you will find it. But I think for us, especially being like Latina and being women and like a lot of other underserved communities, like you'll always find these things, but it doesn't mean that it will stop you from progressing. Yes. So like we are talking about these things, but also don't use it as a crutch. Let's not play victim. Like we can use these things to our advantage and we can still excel. Or if you don't want to code switch, fuck it. We can still be our authentic selves and still succeed.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So we'll catch you guys on the next time.
Yes. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Espiritu Coffee Chats.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation and found a little inspiration to take with you.
If you loved what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform.
And stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and more.
Until next time, keep the spirit alive and the coffee brewing. Cheers! Ow, ow, ow.